Hi, I'm Eli, 24 years old, and I'd describe myself as an average guy. I work part-time at a small repair shop close to the local college campus, dealing with tool repairs, greasy hands, and early mornings. For the last fortnight, I've been aiding my older brother Jonas in settling into his new rental home, a tranquil small town that's approximately 40 minutes from mine. He recently got married and they needed more space. With some spare time between jobs, I chose to lend a hand. So at 10 a.m., I was shifting boxes out of the U-Haul like a mule sweating through my t-shirt when Jonas hollered from within the truck, "Take this one to the back door." I picked it up, navigated around the house to the wrong porch. Honestly, the house numbers were confusing. Thus, I knocked on the door since the back door was closed and I didn't want to intrude without permission. Moments pass, and a woman around her late 30s emerges from the door, coffee mug in hand, attired in gray hoodie and yoga leggings, barefoot with messy dark blonde hair. She seemed taken aback, but not irritated. With a half smile, she said, "You're definitely not the pizza delivery man." I hesitated for a moment. "I apologize, I thought it was apartment 42. She glanced over her shoulder. "Nearly correct. It's 40. I chuckled nervously. "That clarifies things. I'll take it to the neighbor instead." Yet she scrutinized the heavy package in my arms before returning her gaze to me. "If it's a gift, leave it here," she suggested playfully, her smile suggesting she seldom used it and wasn't certain about doing so this time. For a brief instant, we stood awkwardly before I prepared to depart. She leaned out the doorway, peering past me into her yard just as I was about to go. "Dear friends, please help us reach our first 1,000 subscribers. Please like and subscribe to our channel. It will motivate us to make more videos like this for you. By any chance you've moved large furniture before?" I gave a surprised look. I know enough not to injure myself if I don't take proper precautions. Laughing, she stepped outside and pointed towards a sizable, rust-colored armchair partially hidden in the grass on her back patio. "This thing has been taunting me for 2 weeks now. I tried dragging it across the yard, but it only sinks deeper into the ground. Impulsively, I placed a box on your porch. Would you help me move it?" She looked at me with a mixture of wonder and relief. "Couldn't you?" "Certainly," I responded. We circumnavigated the house and I took one end of the chair. It was heavier than anticipated, as we positioned it near a glass sliding door. She knelt to place a small mat under the legs. "I've been living here for almost 5 years," she noted, "and I still haven't grown accustomed to asking for help." "It's peculiar," I shrugged. "Most people are willing to assist. You just have to let them." She raised her gaze towards me. She wasn't being coy. It was more like assessing. It seemed she was trying to discern the kind of person I was before speaking further. We had both stood up and readjusted the chair when I started to sweep my hands away, and she commented. "Many men no longer notice her," she said, not seeking pity, but merely stating a fact. It felt almost like she had accidentally revealed it. Without thinking, I just looked at her and said, "Then they are blind." She paused for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then she took a quick breath and laughed softly, perhaps doubtingly. "All right, thank you for your help." "Eli," she whispered, my name now seemed heavier. "I will allow you to resume your moving chaos." I nodded and smiled. "Anytime," and I walked off her porch, down the steps, and back across the driveway to my brother's house. But for the remainder of the day, all I could ponder was the way she looked at me after I said that. Maybe she didn't expect anyone to take notice of her anymore. The next day found me at Jonas's house, unloading the final smaller boxes from the truck. His wife was already arguing with him about where the television should be placed, so I took advantage of the moment to step outside for some fresh air. The area remained peaceful, just distant bird calls and an occasional dog barking a few blocks away. Walking out to retrieve another box, I spotted the house next door, Mara's residence. It wasn't until her name came to mind that I realized I recognized it. She had casually mentioned it the day before when I helped her with that stubborn armchair. "I am Mara," she said then, unprompted. I hadn't asked at the time, but I hadn't forgotten either. Now, she stood on her porch with a watering can, dressed much like she was before, in simple pants, a navy t-shirt, and barefoot. She noticed me too. Her face lit up with a deliberate smile, asking, "Did you suffer another defeat?" I returned the grin, saying, "Not this time, merely taking a drink break. Given that, since you're on your way, why bother feigning ignorance about the coffee aroma?" This comment made me chuckle. I hadn't realized I was so overt. She gestured towards her open front door and said, "Come in. I won't keep you long." I hesitated for a brief moment, but not truly. I moved towards her house. The interior was clean, yet personal, neither staged nor polished, only genuine. Framed art adorned the walls, a candle burned on the side table, and a stack of books on the kitchen counter suggested reading. It was a place where one wanted to settle down for a while. She handed me a mug without asking about my preference. "Black," I confirmed without complaint. We shifted into the compact sunroom overlooking the backyard, which happened to be the same spot where I assisted her yesterday. The morning light streamed in through the windows, and everything felt effortless. "I want to express my gratitude for your aid yesterday," she remarked, seated opposite me. "I understand I might be pulling you into it unintentionally. In truth, I was merely using you as an excuse to rest from lugging boxes momentarily." I ought to reciprocate the favor. This earned her another smile. "Not the prompt or amiable one," she clarified. Her eyes softened and she took a sip of coffee, looking at me for a moment. "Are you always this courteous?" she inquired. "Is it solely directed towards older women with cumbersome furnishings?" I chuckled. "I show politeness to those who extend the same courtesy to me. There is no link between age and this." Her eyebrows arched slightly, amused. "Proceed with caution. That resembles charm dangerously." "I didn't intend it," I admitted openly. She leaned back in her chair and gazed out of the window. "It's intriguing," she mused. "You've been living alone for a while now. You grow accustomed to tranquility. However, occasionally someone says something that makes the silence more oppressive." She disclosed that she got divorced 2 years ago, after 11 years without children. There were no courtroom battles. She just left. Now 37, people stop asking if she's seeing someone, assuming she isn't or doesn't want to. After a lengthy silence, she acknowledged that she hadn't intended to burden me with this information, but it was real. I replied that I preferred genuine discussions over small talk. She listened intently, not surprised but curious, and commented that I didn't sound 24. We talked for about an hour, during which she still enjoys vintage Florence and The Machine, and we disagreed on whether movies are overrated. She once contemplated quitting design to start a bakery instead. The interaction felt effortless and genuine, like stumbling upon a serene corner hidden within our lives that functioned naturally. Upon departing, I thanked her for the coffee. She escorted me to the door, and before I stepped outside, she expressed, "Eli, I'm not trying to elicit praise, but you caught me off guard when you mentioned that men no longer pay attention to me. Yes, you were sincere about it." She briefly averted her eyes before meeting mine again. "All right, thank you." Many people wouldn't have reacted at all. They would have merely laughed or switched topics. "I don't think you're unseen," I said. "I feel most people stopped observing carefully." She offered a quiet smile. "Perhaps," I acknowledged. "I'll run into you again around Mara. You're improving." As I retraced my steps across the yard, Something within me shifted. I wasn't certain what it was, but I knew our conversation wouldn't be our last. I hadn't planned for it to transpire, yet I sensed she was aware too. In the ensuing weeks, events unfolded naturally. I held no desire to see Mara again, but I also didn't anticipate the encounter. Jonas and his wife required aid settling in, so I frequently dropped by to fix a faulty kitchen faucet, construct shelves, and assemble an IKEA conundrum that threatened our kinship. Each visit, Mara was there, not obviously waiting, but always present. She tended her plants each morning, took out the recycling, sat on her front steps reading, and always held a warm beverage. Her sunglasses kept her hair off her face. The third time we crossed paths, she smiled and questioned, "You again?" I merely shrugged in response. I seem unable to keep away. A pattern emerged. I'd visit Jonas and inevitably discover an excuse to linger at Mara's apartment. Occasionally, it was just 2 minutes, sometimes 20. On one occasion, I picked up a bag of potting soil from her trunk without hesitation, while she wasn't immediately thankful. Instead, she looked at me and inquired, "Aren't you afraid to lend a hand?" In another instance, I encountered her at the grocery store, both of us deciding between premium and economical ice cream. I caught her attention, and she triumphantly lifted a pint of mint chip in silence. We ended up browsing the supermarket together, discussing food options and debating which peanut butter was superior. Upon checkout, she bought my energy drink without prompting. When I suggested repayment, she responded, "Consider it a down payment for when I need you to lift something heavy again." Over time, these small instances accumulated, and between our meaningful glances and comfortable silences, I found myself eagerly anticipating her presence. Upon reaching Jonas's house one day, he was no longer there. Seemed like they spent the day in town. I figured I'd head home, but then spotted Mara arranging a small table under a tree in the yard. She looked surprised as she saw me. "You didn't go with the newlyweds." I shook my head, explaining they left me behind. "So, what are you up to?" Trying to convince myself that eating lunch outside improves taste. Paused. "Want some company?" She hesitated for a moment, just looked at me with an empty expression, and gestured towards the chair opposite hers. We sat there, ate sandwiches, and shared chips. It was pleasant, a good kind of feeling you don't want to vocalize because it might disappear. Following lunch, we continued sitting outside. I helped her untangle a wind chime stuck in a tree branch, and we resumed our silence. Then she said, "You make me forget the time." I stared at her. Her words were subtle, neither romantic nor flirtatious, just honest. She was taken aback by her own comments. I grinned. Was that a hint she didn't acknowledge me? It's rare, that's all. The way she said it piqued my curiosity. But I remained silent instead, switching the conversation to music. She disclosed she possessed an uncrackable 2009 playlist. I contested her claim. As a result, we sat beside each other on her porch, passing her phone back and forth, playing old tunes and mocking one another to her preference. She mentioned she once enjoyed hiking, but hadn't done so in years. I suggested taking her along, but she said she no longer had appropriate footwear. I countered, "Let's start with a stroll around the block." She appeared skeptical with her gaze, yet the corner of her mouth subtly moved, which was enough for me. Later that night, when I returned home, I texted her a lake snapshot from our hike. She waited an hour before responding. She responded with an image of her backyard at sunset, bathed in lovely orange light filtering through trees. Beneath it, she wrote, "Too beautiful to enjoy alone." I spent some time gazing at it, my heart pounding unexpectedly for a man supposed to be helping his brother move. I replied, "Then wait for me next time." She left the message unanswered. In 10 minutes, 20. I set aside my phone and ventured into the kitchen trying to distract myself. Halfway through heating leftovers, it buzzed again. The new message read, "Come now, it's still glowing." I didn't adjust it, I didn't fix my hair, I just grabbed my keys and drove home. Upon arrival, she sat wrapped in a blanket on her back patio with another steaming mug of tea nearby. The sky was aglow with orange, pink, and lavender hues. I sat silently next to her. She handed me the mug. For some time, we remained silent, simply watching as the sky darkened and the first stars emerged. She quietly expressed, "I never intended for this situation." I made no inquiry as to its nature. I sensed that we were both aware of it, and I believed we were both apprehensive about it. I also thought we had stopped feigning ignorance about its existence. I'm unsure how long we stayed on the patio, maybe an hour or longer. By then, the sky was completely dark and the coldness was creeping in. I remember reaching for the fringe of the blanket and offering to share it. She didn't respond. Instead, she lifted it without looking at me. I crawled under with her. We sat there side by side, wrapped in the same woolen covering, gazing ahead. Yet, my thoughts were no longer on the stars. At some point, I glanced down. Her hand lay still in her lap. My fingers moved towards hers unintentionally. When they touched, she didn't stir. Neither did I. Eventually, she spoke up. "Aren't you aware that this can't progress, do you?" Her voice was not sharp, not cold, but rather weary, as if one who's trodden a path before, fearful of its destination. You asked slowly, "Why should we?" She chuckled softly. "Because people talk? Because I am 15 years your senior? Because I've lived through some complicated tales, and you haven't even penned yours yet?" I looked at her. "Do you think this is just another page for me?" She remained silent for a while. Perhaps I forgot the sensation of being observed. It hit me harder than anticipated. We didn't kiss then. That night wasn't about that. It was about intimacy, choosing not to withdraw, about the quietness that arises when two souls cease overanalyzing. In time, we both rose. She led me quietly to the side gate. Before I left, I turned back. "Speak up," she waited. "This doesn't feel like a blunder." Her eyes met mine. "That's what terrifies me." That night, sleep evaded me not due to confusion, but because things suddenly became clear for the first time in a while. The following morning, she initiated contact. "Mara, did you mean what transpired last night? It was me? Mara, you barely know me. Me, I'm making an effort. Mara, drop by later if you will." So, I did. The afternoon contrasted starkly with the previous night. It was warmer and brighter, echoing with laughter. I arrived bearing tools she hadn't requested, fixing a cabinet hinge she casually mentioned. She prepared tea, adding lemon and honey this time to elevate its refinement. We conversed about trivial matters for a while, just daily life. She spoke of a client who couldn't distinguish between a logo and a cartoon. I shared anecdotes about my first automobile and the blunder where I drained the battery by leaving the radio on all night. Then she softly inquired, "Do your friends realize you're here?" I shook my head in response. Why ask such a question? She tilted her head, questioning what response she would get if she did. Pondering, I realized it was probably nothing positive, but I've long moved past seeking their approval. This seemed to strike a chord with her. Sipping her tea, she commented, "You're not who I anticipated, good or bad." Instead of my usual response, I reacted differently, causing unease. We sat in her living room, debating if pineapple belonged on pizza. She strongly disagreed, while I advocated for it. Upon returning from the kitchen, she presented 2 slices, one with pepperoni and another with pineapple on a paper towel. "I ordered both," she said. to put an end to this. You're daring. I'm intrigued. After taking a bite, I smirked. Still a viable option. She then invited me closer. Standing up, we were barely a foot apart. Gazing at me, her expression was inscrutable. She murmured, "This seems wrong, yet it seemed right." She didn't verbally reply. Instead, she leaned in slowly, cautiously, until our lips barely touched. It wasn't a dramatic cinematic moment. It was quiet and deliberate, as if we were both still considering turning back, yet neither of us did. We resumed our seats, now closer. I placed my hand on her knee, and she didn't recoil. "I'm not certain what this is," she admitted, "but I don't abhor it." I smiled. That's a start. We hadn't labeled anything that day, nor discussed ourselves or our direction. Yet, when I departed, she guided me to the door. This time, she kissed me goodbye, not as a test or hesitantly, but sincerely. That night, I spent my hours in bed pondering everything. The age difference, how no one could understand, how she smelled like jasmine and vanilla, and how the world seemed to quieten as she spoke. And I repeatedly found myself contemplating the same thought. For 3 months now, it hasn't felt like an error. It's been nearly 3 months since I sat on Mara's patio and confessed I didn't think what we were doing was wrong. 3 months since our lengthy, quiet kiss. 3 months of secret mornings, subtle glances, long strolls through peaceful neighborhoods, and nights where it seemed like time had stood still. We weren't in public, but neither were we truly hiding. It was just more convenient to keep things private. I wasn't sure if my brother would comprehend our situation. I was confident his wife wouldn't. And Mara, she had reasons. Not because she felt embarrassed, but because she knew the world often criticizes women like her for pursuing anything after they turn 35. Most of my free time has been spent at her apartment. I still help Jonas with odd tasks occasionally, but once the chaos of moving settled down, he no longer needed my help. Strangely enough, I didn't stop visiting. I stopped feigning excuses for my presence. Mara and I found a rhythm. Occasionally, I would prepare meals. On other occasions, she would play old jazz records. We'd dine on the floor, reminiscent of our teen years. We shared secrets we had never told anyone before. Things that surprised even us. There were no deadlines, no pressure. It was merely coexistence. Just two people choosing to persist in each other's company. Then an offer came. I had applied for a full-time job at a garage in Oregon months earlier, a remote possibility I had almost forgotten. Until I received the call. The job was mine if I wanted it. Good salary, complete benefits, opportunity for a fresh start. Initially, I didn't even share the news with Mara. I tried to convince myself that it wasn't a big deal. Maybe it wasn't the right time to discuss it. Perhaps everything was just temporary. But then I noticed her looking at me oddly one night. I was unusually quiet. We sat on the couch. Our legs were intertwined under a blanket. A film plays in the backdrop, partially unnoticed. She paused it. "All right, let me pretend to be clueless. What are you talking about?" She gave me a scrutinizing look, tilting her head subtly. It felt like she was sensing my unspoken thoughts. "You've been preoccupied all night," she clarified. "Don't say you're tired." Thus, I revealed everything to her. The call, the proposition, the remuneration, the chance to relocate. I didn't expect her to cry, but she didn't. Instead, she seemed to freeze, as if a part of her had suddenly gone dormant. I told her that I hadn't decided anything yet, that it wasn't set in stone. I wasn't certain about my desire to leave. She merely nodded. Then she questioned, "Would you have said yes if I weren't here?" I didn't lie. Possibly. She glanced away, fidgeting with the blanket. "You should go," she murmured softly. This was a temporary situation, I realized. It surprised me how calmly she spoke. Amara, no! She stopped me gently. I understood what it meant. I had anticipated this moment. I told myself not to grow overly fond of how you affected me. It was too perfect, unanticipated, and revitalizing. You are not just a transient phase I am experiencing, I responded. Maybe not, but you still have time to find out who you truly are. I've already been through the experimental years. I don't want to be the one causing you to remain, only to regret it later. I stayed quiet. I didn't want to go. I didn't want to upset her. Yet, I also didn't want her to think she was preventing my progress. So, the next morning, I gathered my belongings. I didn't bid farewell to Jonas or his spouse. I hardly spoke. I merely drove. For hours, I didn't activate the radio. I needed quietness to comprehend the situation. I stopped at a gas station in another town. I bought coffee that I wasn't particularly fond of. I gazed at the steering wheel for several minutes. Then my phone vibrated. Mara, don't go! No one has ever seen me like you have. I stared at the text message, read it multiple times. She had never begged or asked for anything before, except what I willingly offered. However, now she is inquiring earnestly. So, I turned the vehicle around. Upon arriving at her house, she was standing there, barefoot, wrapped in a cardigan, without makeup, and with red but resolute eyes. I stepped out. She didn't budge. I don't want to miss this opportunity, I said, but it's not because I'm trying to prove something to someone else or find myself. I already know what truly matters. She approached cautiously and placed her hand on my chest. Are you certain? I confirmed with a nod. Yes, I see you. And there's more, she added without shedding tears. Neither did I. Instead, we held each other for a prolonged period. A few weeks later, I secured employment at a nearby auto shop, not glamorous, but stable. I then settled into a small apartment just minutes from her residence. Initially, I referred to it as her place. Over time, it transformed into our place. We never publicly declared our relationship or posted pictures. It was our quiet understanding. Those in the know understood, while others who didn't couldn't vote. A year later, we embarked on the same trail I'd spoken about earlier. She sported new footwear this time around. I recall assisting her through a muddy patch. She feigned annoyance as I tried to help, but at the summit, she glanced at me, messed with her hair, cheeks rosy, and said, "Now is when I confess my feelings for you." To which I replied, "You've already done so." We shared a kiss. No fireworks or grandiose music accompanied this moment. Instead, it was the tranquil affection reminiscent of dawn, soft, assured, and perfectly timed. This marked the commencement of our eternal bond. There were no games involved. Fear was unwarranted. Authenticity wasn't feigned. We were simply two individuals who stumbled upon something genuine when neither sought it.